Hey everybody. So welcome along to our food waste webinar. My name is Claire Patton. I'm the Green Schools Biodiversity Officer. And we're really delighted to have you all here with us to celebrate on World Food Day. This should be a really fun webinar where we're going to learn a lot of different things about food waste. So just a few little bits of housekeeping before we start. And this webinar is being recorded. And it will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards for anybody who missed it. But the only screens that will be recorded are the facilitators. So you can keep your video on if you like. You won't be recorded. We do ask, because we do have a large group with us today, that you keep your microphone on mute. But you can ask any questions in the chat box. And we'll also be sharing a bit of information in that chat box as well. So in a few minutes, we're going to have, I'm going to hand you over to our first speaker, Breanne Ayala from FoodCloud Ireland. And then a little bit later, we're also going to have some special guests from Carysfort National School. And after we hear from both of those speakers, we will have a Q&A at the end. So if you have a question as we go along, you can pop it in the chat, or you can wait for the end when we will have a chance to have a bit of a chat about the things that we've talked about today. So as well as being World Food Day today, it's also the first day of Climate Action Week. So it's a really jam-packed week with tons of events coming on. So if you would like to see what other events we have coming up, you can check out the page on the Green Schools website. So if you go to greenschoolsireland.org/Climate Action Week, you will see lots of really great webinars and all kinds of different live events. So I would encourage you to check that out. And I think Grania might also link in some bits in the chat box that you'll be able to see now. So as well as it being Climate Action Week, we are also really delighted to welcome some participants who are involved in the BioBio project. So Green Schools are really delighted to be one of the partners in an EU project called BioBio, and this is all about trying to improve education and awareness of the bioeconomy. So if you haven't heard of bioeconomy, it just means making things with something other than gas and oil and fuel. So it's ways to become more sustainable. And you can find out much more about this on the BioBio website, which is biobio.eu. So that's it from me in terms of saying hello and welcome and delighted to have you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and hand you over to Bree from FoodCloud. So I'm going to go over to you now, Bree.
Hi, everyone. Let me just set up my presentation real quick. Okay. Can you see that all right? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, great.
So as Claire said, my name is Breanne Ayala. I work for a company called FoodCloud that is based in Ireland, as well as the UK and some other countries. So I'm here to tell you about food waste. So what is food waste? You might already know, but just in case you don't, food waste is food that is made for humans to eat, but is wasted instead by being thrown out. Food waste can occur anywhere throughout its timeline, from the stage from when it's grown at the farm all the way to being in your households or a restaurant. So some food is wasted at every stage of production. This photo kind of shows you the different stages. The stages include the farm stage, the harvest stage, processing, at the store, and then at homes and restaurants. Food is wasted at the farm and harvest level due to farmers overgrowing or overproducing a product, like carrots, for example. And the retailers, like a supermarket, may not want to buy those carrots either because they have enough already, or they think the carrots might not be good enough looking to sell. So the farmers then throw away those extra carrots. Food is wasted during the harvest and processing phase, mostly due to not storing the food properly, so it loses its value. Food is wasted at the retail stage, which means like Lidl and Tesco, where you would go to buy your own food for your homes for various reasons, like the appearance of food, needing to sell the food by a certain date, too much in stock, and needing to restock the shelves. Food is wasted at home for a lot of reasons, like overbuying, not planning meals, which results in throwing out unused food, and also not understanding the difference between the use by and best before dates, which I'll explain later in this presentation. The amount of food wasted at each phase, it changes depending on which part of the world you're looking at. However, no matter where you are in the world, food waste happens at each stage. So you might be wondering, okay, now you know what food waste is, but why is it a bad thing? So millions of hectares of forests are cut down to grow our food. So when that happens, this puts a strain on our water supply and leads to the loss of animals, plants, and where they live. So when the food we throw away rots, it releases harmful greenhouse gases, which causes pollution and then contributes to the problem of climate change. Our food system overall is responsible for 34% of greenhouse gas emissions. And from this 34%, it's estimated that 8 to 10% are emissions just from food waste alone, which is 4 times larger than global emissions from the aviation sector, which includes planes and helicopters and everything that's flying in the sky. Food waste is the biggest contributor to climate change after the energy industry and is the biggest contributor to loss of biodiversity, which is plants and animals, the loss of forests, drought, freshwater pollution, and the hurting of aquatic wildlife. Also, in addition to growing, processing, and transporting food, they all use significant amounts of resources like land, water, and energy. So every item of food wasted carries an environmental weight of the wasted resources as well. So food waste is really wrong because when there's food being thrown out, there's also a lot of people that could use it. So not only is food waste wrong for hurting the environment, but because it could go to people that could be using that food. And lastly, food waste is a bit of a waste of money for your moms and dads and the households that you live in. The average Irish household can save around €700 a year by avoiding food waste. So food waste specifically in Ireland, around 1 million tons of food are wasted every year in Ireland alone. That's enough food waste that would fill Croke Park in Dublin to the very top twice over and then return for a third time to fill it up again over halfway. So if you've ever been to Croke Park for a match and you've seen how big it is, imagine filling up that 3 times. That's how much food waste we throw out in Ireland. This much food is wasted while 1 in 11 people in Ireland are at risk of not having enough food to eat, which can be called food poverty or food insecurity. The average Irish household throws out 150 kilograms or the same weight as a bottlenose dolphin of food each year, and a significant amount of that food is still okay for humans to eat. Globally, food waste, so not just in Ireland, but everywhere in the world, more than 1/4 of food produced is wasted each year. The amount of food loss across the world would make up the size of a country as big as India and Canada combined. So that's really big when you think about it that way. 40% of all food is wasted, and of that 40%, 60% is still suitable for human consumption when it's wasted. So as I mentioned, this isn't only bad for the environment, but it's really bad when you consider 835 million people in the world don't have enough to eat globally. And the amount of food we throw out would be able to feed those 835 people very easily. 835 million people very easily. So I'm going to play a video now that sums up a lot of what I just said, but I know some people might be a different type of learner and might enjoy a video more than me talking at you. So hopefully you'll be able to hear this. Let me know if you can't.
Worldwide, 30% of food is lost or wasted. This averages out to 614 kilocalories per person every single day, about the same as 10 medium eggs or 21 large carrots. But wait, what does this have to do with climate change? When food is lost or wasted, all of the resources that went into making it are wasted too. Globally, this accounts for 1.4 billion hectares of wasted land and 250 kilometers cubed of wasted water every year. That's a land area larger than Canada and India put together, and enough water to fill up 100 million Olympic-sized swimming pools. What's more, food loss and waste are responsible for 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. These emissions not only come from the production and transportation of the wasted food, but they also come directly from the rotting food itself, when it is broken down by microorganisms. Despite all this waste, in 2019, nearly 1 in 10 people around the world were exposed to severe food insecurity. Reducing food loss and waste by just 50% would provide enough food to feed all of these people, and then some. Although food losses occur at all stages of the food supply chain, their main cause varies between different countries. In wealthier countries, more than 40% of food loss and waste occur at the retail and consumer stage, largely due to consumer behavior and food supply exceeding demand. Food losses in lower-income countries mostly occur earlier in the supply chain, due to poor harvesting techniques, insufficient storage and cooling facilities, and a lack of infrastructure for food transport and marketing. So, what can we do to reduce all of this food loss and waste? Well, let's begin at the start of the supply chain. We need to reduce food losses on the farm itself. Suboptimal conditions, such as not enough water and too much heat, significantly reduce the growth potential of food crops. And 20 to 40% of crops globally are lost to insect pests, weeds, and diseases. Global soil quality is also degrading, making it harder for plants to access the nutrients they need to grow, and forcing farmers to rely on artificial fertilizers. By improving soil quality and exploiting natural interactions between plants, animals, and their environment, farmers can improve crop yields whilst reducing waste and resource use. Providing farmers with effective harvesting technologies will also be important, as food is often lost to damage or spillage during the harvesting process. One of the biggest causes of food loss in lower-income countries is storage. If food is left somewhere that is too hot or too damp, it can easily spoil or rot. Improving storage facilities and transport infrastructure can therefore significantly reduce losses. If lower-income countries had the same access to refrigeration as richer nations, food losses would be reduced by 25%. To solve this problem, we need to develop low-cost, off-grid solutions for food preservation, such as mobile, solar-powered storage. Food processing and more durable packaging can also prevent food spoilage during storage, transport, and at the consumer stage. Although we would need to consider the sustainability of the packaging that is used. Even so, innovation can only get us so far. Retailer and consumer behaviors will also need to change. For example, supermarkets set very high standards for what food should look like, meaning that imperfect food is often discarded, even if it's perfectly edible. Embracing these ugly foods at both the retail and consumer level will significantly reduce how much gets thrown away. Restaurants, retailers, and caterers can also reduce their waste by selling food in more appropriate portions, and by donating uneaten goods to those who are unable to afford them. But what can we do as individuals? Well, we can start by planning ahead and only buying what we need. We can cook with leftovers and use our freezers to keep food fresh for longer. As well as encouraging less wasteful practices, we also need to be more aware of how to store food properly and how to tell if food is still safe beyond its expiration date. As the world gets richer, consumer-level food waste is likely to become more and more of a problem. Therefore, it is vital that people are aware of the impacts of food waste and what they can do to make a difference. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification worldwide.
Okay, now I'm going to tell you a bit about what FoodCloud, the company I work for, does, so you can see what an organization in Ireland is doing to tackle the issue of food waste. So FoodCloud's mission or vision is for a world where no good food goes to waste. So FoodCloud was created by Iseult Ward and Evan O'Brien, who you can see in the picture there. Iseult and Evan met while studying at Trinity College, Dublin. Iseult was doing an undergrad degree in business, and Evan was a postgraduate student completing a master's degree in environmental science. They shared a mutual love of food and a dislike for food waste, so they started working together on a college project to explore how they could create a new network for food in Ireland. This project later grew into FoodCloud. So in June 2012, Iseult and Evan did their first food donation, which they took the extra food from a farmer's market in Dublin and helped it be donated to a charity who uses food to help people in their community. However, while they were doing this first donation, they realized that they needed technology to help the process grow and continue on. So over the past 10 years, Iseult and Evan took their idea that started as a college project and made it into a social enterprise with a national and international impact and delivers food that would have gone to waste to those who need it most. So FoodCloud does this. They created an app called Foodiverse, which on the app, a store or a restaurant, so like Lidl or Tesco, can upload a donation of food that they otherwise would have just thrown out. And a charity in the area can log on to the app and see the donation and decide if they want to collect the food. And if they collect the food, then the charity uses that food to give as groceries or provide meals to people in their community who need it, who might not be able to afford to go to the grocery store and buy their own groceries. As well, FoodCloud has 3 big warehouses that look like this picture here. They're based in Dublin, Galway, and Cork, and they take in really big amounts of food and break it down into packages that can be delivered to charities around Ireland. The food reaches people who are currently experiencing homelessness, childcare centers whose parents may struggle to buy food for their children every week, people struggling with addiction, community centers in areas of low income, and food banks, which give out groceries to people who may not have enough money at the moment to buy food at the supermarkets. Some of the stores that donate food include Aldi, Lidl, Tesco, and more. We also work with farmers directly and distribution centers. FoodCloud technology is now being used in 4 countries and is preparing to also be used in Kenya and Indonesia. So I really want to take a moment here to point out to you students that FoodCloud was started by 2 students who saw a problem in the world that they didn't like, and so they worked together to create a solution. And even though they were young and women, which are 2 groups that aren't always listened to by other people, they created a whole company that is now creating a huge impact on food waste in Ireland, which helps the environment and people who really need food. So now with all of that information, you might be thinking, what can you do at home to fight food waste? So you can see in this graph, it shows you where food is wasted in Ireland, and 31% of food waste is being wasted at your home, which is a pretty big amount. So let's talk about what you can do at home to create less food waste. By avoiding food waste, as I mentioned, you're helping to fix the problems of the environment and not enough food to go around. But the big one is helping to fight climate change by creating less greenhouse gases. So some tips that you can do at home. The good news is that reducing your food waste isn't actually very difficult once you know how to do it. You don't need to invest in any fancy equipment or take any courses. You just need to, or not even give up the foods you love. So some of the things that you can do is to make sure you only buy the food you need. You can plan your meals for the week. You can do this with your parents at home. And you can go grocery shopping with a list and only buy the foods for the week that you know you're going to eat. Buying the right amount of food. If one person in your family only likes carrots and no one else does, then make sure you only buy enough carrots for that one person and not a huge thing of carrots because they'll go bad. When you're cooking and serving yourself, make sure you serve yourself the amount of food that you're actually really going to eat, so you don't throw away the extra food that you don't eat. And also, if you all serve yourself from a serving dish instead of onto your plate directly, then you're more likely to save the leftovers from the serving dish. If you have leftover ingredients, look up a recipe to use with those ingredients. So, for example, if you have bananas at home and they're going brown and they might be too brown for you to want to eat, you could look up a recipe that uses those bananas, like making banana bread instead of throwing out those bananas. You can eat or freeze your leftovers. So you can eat your leftovers from dinner for lunch the next day, or you can slice the food and freeze it, and then eat it later once you unfreeze it. And to make sure to store your food properly. So some tips on that is to keep fruits apart because they can cause them to ripen more quickly. Make sure to eat the food that is perishable, so like fruits and vegetables, before you eat something that's packaged and not as perishable. And storing food in glass containers instead of plastic helps them last longer. Another tip I'm going to give you is that you might notice these labels on your food. There's always a used by and best before label on anything you buy. And by knowing what these labels mean, it will help you reduce food waste because there's often confusion between the two labels and foods thrown out before it may need to be. So the used by date refers more to food safety. This is food that can be eaten up to that end of the date, but not after. So the date on it, you don't eat the food after that. This is usually on foods like fish and meat and salad and dairy products, and it will make you ill if you eat the food past the used by date. However, you can freeze the food before the used by date. It kind of acts as a pause, but then once you defrost it, you have to eat it right away. And then the best before date refers to the food quality. So you can eat the food after the best before date, but it might just mean that it doesn't have as much nutritional value as it did beforehand, or it might not be as crispy or tasty, but it's still okay to eat. Okay, and then I'm just one more video to wrap up the presentation. This video is from the EPA's campaign stopfoodwaste.ie, which is a great resource for teachers and students if you want to look more into food waste and find lesson plans and things you can teach in the class further.
Each year, we throw away 1/3 of the food we buy. That adds up to over 1 billion tonnes of food wasted worldwide every year. And when we throw away unwanted food, that's not all we're throwing away. Millions of hectares of forests are cut down annually to grow food. This puts a strain on our water supply and leads to the loss of animals, plants, and where they live. When the food we throw away rots, it releases harmful greenhouse gases and causes pollution. So what can we do? By simply planning our meals, buying only what we need, researching recipes to use up leftover ingredients, avoiding discounted multi-buys in the supermarket, and buying loose fruit and vegetables rather than large bags, we can make a significant contribution to protecting the planet for future generations. And save ourselves around €700 a year in the process. To learn more about reducing food waste in your home, visit stopfoodwaste.ie. Each year, we throw away 1/3.
Okay, that's all for me. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening.
Thanks, Bree. That was brilliant. Really interesting stuff there. And I'm sure there's tons of questions for you about that. But before we get to those questions, I'm going to hand over to the students in Carysfort National School. And I know that some of those tips you were talking about, they have been already getting stuck into. So hopefully this will give you guys some ideas of what you can do in your schools. So we have a few different speakers from Carysfort. So I'm gonna share my screen for them. And then we are gonna start off with some students from 4th class. So we've got Poppy, Madison, and Jeff. and they are going to chat to you guys now.
So right onto the screen over this.
As part of our green school work for our flat, we decided to collect recipes that used up leftover food. I wrote a letter to Sabina Higgins. She sent me back 2 recipes for our collection. When I was in 3rd class, we were making a book about using leftover foods to put into a book. I asked a chef called Edward Hayden to ask him if we could use his recipe dirt cake. He also gave me his cookbook. Hello, my name is Madison. We also collected recipes from home. My nanny gave me a recipe for bubble and sweet. It uses the leftover vegetables and mashed potatoes from Sunday dinner to make a new meal.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, guys. Great to hear about your food weight recipe book. And now we're going to go on and have some students from 5th class. So we've got Archie, Caleb, and Dylan, who are going to tell us a little bit about food waste experiments that they did.
Last year in 4th class, we completed a food experiment to show the importance of reducing waste and caring for our environment. Our experiment observed the production of methane gas from food scrap decomposition to mimic a landfill decomposition.
When food is placed in the trash and sent to landfill, it breaks down without oxygen. This decomposition process makes carbon dioxide and methane gas. This process can take a really long time. When food is composted, it breaks down with oxygen, which is much faster. The decomposed food will turn into nutrient-rich compost.
For our experiment, we crushed food scraps and added them into bottles. We cover each bottle with a balloon and take them to the bottle to prevent gas leakage. We allowed the bottles to sit for several days and watched them filling with air over time.
Brilliant. Thanks a million for that, guys. Very interesting. And then lastly, we have from 6th class, we've got Josh, Isabel, Yasmin, Amelia, and Saoirse.
You're on the screen. Josh, when you're ready, don't forget to go. Every day this cycle, our grade school teacher will come into our classroom bringing 2 boxes. The teacher would go around and get everyone to include raising food wrappers into the boxes. And every week for a number of weeks, we monitor if there's any change over the weeks. Last year we did a lunchbox challenge where every week Ms. Ivanov would come into our classrooms with boxes that put all our food waste in wrappers in. At first we had a lot of food waste, but after a few weeks it started to reduce. We continued to do that until we had less food waste in wetlands. We did very well and we are still trying to maintain all our progress. Although sometimes we do use a little bit of tin foil or thin film on our sandwiches, but we are still working towards our goal.
Last year we did the lunchbox challenge to make sure everyone had the healthiest lunch possible. We also did it to get rid of any wrappers and tin foil in the lunch boxes, which everyone was happy to do. We definitely learned something. We learned that we don't always need tin foil. My mum wraps my sandwiches in napkins. She also puts food in containers. That's all you need to do. Just please make an effort. We also took pictures of 2 bins, which one had food waste and the other had wrappers. On the first week, the 2 bins were overflowing. On the second week, they were so much better, but you can always try harder. The manager of Supervalue came in to talk to us about food waste. He was saying that when shopping, only put the items you need into the trolley and only put the necessary foods into the lunchbox. Thank you for listening to me.
We did the lunchbox challenge last year and checked food labels. So a lot of people in the school tried their best to bring in more containers than plastic to help the environment. We learned a lot from it, seeing all the food waste. Some people still use wrappers and some don't. I think we were happy. We're still trying to reduce waste in school. The lunchbox challenge was a challenge we did to see how much wrappers and food waste the school had. The challenge went on for multiple weeks to see what we cut down on. The things we wanted to cut down on were tinfoil, plastic wrappers, or unneeded packages. On the first week, the bins were full to the brim, basically overflowing. On the second week, we cut down way more. Each was about 7/8 full. On the last week, we cut down so much more. It was about 3/4 full. We cut down about 1/4 where that's how we did it. That's how we did the lunchbox challenge. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, guys. That was great to hear all the different projects that you got involved with there. So what I might do now is ask if anybody has any questions for either Bree or for the students in Carysfort. I know I have a few questions. So if you would like to ask anything, you can put your question into the chat now. And just while we're waiting for you to do that, I might ask each speaker something. So my first question, I'll ask the guys in Carysfort about your food recipe book. What was your favorite recipe that you got that had a good suggestion for something you could make with food that usually goes to waste? Was there anything that sounded really nice that you wanted to try?
Did you have a favorite recipe? No, you like them all? I think they liked them all, Claire.
Can you tell us about any one that you got? I know someone mentioned their gourd cake. Can you tell us what was in that?
There was used stale bread and cake in the sugar cake.
Nice one. So yeah, stale bread's probably one that goes to waste a lot. And for Bree, one thing you mentioned was that you found you were working with farmers directly, that you might get some donations from them. Was that generally food that you kind of mentioned that some shops don't want to buy ugly food or food that's not right? Is that kind of the food you tend to get, or what kind of food were you getting from farmers directly?
Yeah, so it's actually a new project that FoodCloud started called the Growers Project, if anyone's interested and wants to look it up. And it's exactly that. It's that food is in Ireland is graded, so it's grade 1 or 2. So we're collecting grade 2 foods, which means basically the foods that people think look ugly, but they're fine to eat. They just might be a little wonky. So they would be thrown out or fed to animals. So instead, FoodCloud has arranged a system that right now it's being mostly donated to Donegal, because that's an area that doesn't usually get a lot of help with surplus food. But they're hoping to expand it past Donegal to other areas as well.
Very cool. And we have a question here from Clongo's Wood Boarding School. So they don't have packed lunches, they have got a cafeteria. So they're asking, does anyone have any advice for what they can do to reduce food waste if they have a cafeteria rather than packed lunches? What do you think, Bree?
Okay, I wasn't sure if we were gonna let some of the students try to answer. Yeah, I think that with that, but now that you've learned so much about food waste and what you could do to monitor it, maybe you could approach your school and see if you could possibly do like what the classroom did there with monitoring how much food waste you produce. I think that would be a good way to start, to see how much food waste the cafeteria is producing, and then from there see where you can minimize that food waste, if it's wrappers or if it's a lot of extra food that's going bad that's being thrown out, and see if maybe that extra food that's going bad, maybe that could go to parents and students to take home at the end of the day instead of being tossed. So I would definitely try to get involved with the cafeteria and see where the food waste is coming from first.
Real. And then is there any ways, yes, that schools can get involved with FoodCloud? Do you have any direct interactions with schools at the moment?
We don't at the moment, but the actual project that I'm working on is the new education pillar of FoodCloud. So prior, FoodCloud didn't do anything with education. They were just working with the charities directly. So it's something we're creating courses online that anyone can access and take, and we're creating videos and toolkits. So those will be things you can access. And then our plan for the future is to get involved with schools. So kind of a watch this space type of answer. It's coming, but not there yet. But we're
Brilliant.
also always there to come talk to people at schools if you reach out to us. So feel free to reach out to me.
Brilliant. And I have another question for Carysfort about your food waste experiment. Did you find that there was one type of food that was filling the balloons the most, or that was producing the most greenhouse gases?
It was the leaks, because they produce more gases from the.
And how did you know that the leaks were producing the most gas? What happened to the balloon?
The balloon went really big, and all the gas went into the balloon.
Okay.
Very cool. And another question for you guys here from Carysfort National School. They want to know, how long was the food left to rot in the bottles? So yeah, how long did it take those balloons to start to fill up?
But you can't throw things like.
We left them to sit for a week, 7 days.
Okay, very cool. So it took a bit of time, I guess, for the food to start to rot down, which does make sense. And so yeah, really interesting to know that so quickly they were producing gas.
Yeah,
Really
give your
cool.
diary.
And yeah, Gráinne is asking out Clongos, yeah, do you know if your food waste is composted on site?
Right, go on.
So yeah, that's another really great point, guys. Like there's so many options to compost your food in schools. There's loads of different types of composters that you can use. You could even produce a wormery. That's one of my favorite things to be able to do. So yeah, don't forget that the food waste can actually be used for something positive, and to maybe end up growing some of your own food.
Teachers going in and out in class.
So guys, just a reminder again, if anyone has their mic on, to please put it on mute.
We don't have
Brilliant.
toilets for that.
Just checking back and see, is there any other
Because I don't think we can't go to the toilet.
questions there? Let's see. One other question for Carysfort on your classroom challenge. I thought that was a really great idea, to be able to kind of make it a bit of a competition to see what you could reduce. And you mentioned that idea of wrapping things in tinfoil, that you didn't always have to do that because, you know, the packaging can be a big problem as well. So what were the best things you could do instead of wrapping things in tinfoil? What kind of things did you use instead?
Containers can be really useful.
And napkins, wrappers, sandwiches, napkins instead of tinfoil and gum.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, guys. And we have another question here from the Q&A. How many recipes did you get for your recipe book? And is it available? Can people get this recipe book anywhere?
Do you know how many recipes you got last year?
Maybe like a few, maybe
Okay,
5 or 6 or more.
great. And is the recipe book available? Did you make it into a recipe book that we could actually send to other schools with your teacher last year?
I don't know.
Not sure. Maybe that's something we could definitely look into, for sure, going forward.
Definitely. I'd say you'd have a few interested schools here who'd love to
Brilliant.
To get it and to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then maybe a question for you, Bree. We have another student asking, is composting food at home that has gone off a good alternative? So if something has gone off, let's say it's gone past its use by date, would you think that composting it is a good alternative?
I think it's better than throwing it out, but I do think that if you can avoid things even going off, that is what really makes the difference. So if you see that there is bread that's about to go off, popping it in the freezer until you know you'll definitely use it, we'll save it, and then you won't even have to compost it. So it is good because you know, it can give back to the soil. If you spread it around, the soil will give back nutrients, but the best thing to do is try to even avoid as much food waste as possible.
Real. And then we have another question here about the classroom challenge. Was there a prize for the best classroom at the end of it? That's a great question. That's always a nice thing to have. Was there a prize, guys, or was it just kind of a whole school challenge to see could you reduce your waste?
I don't think there was a prize at the end. I think it was just an experiment, really.
It was more a whole school challenge from what I heard. And they also, there was a huge increase. There was a huge increase of, you know, the lunch boxes that are segmented. You know, there was a huge increase. I noticed as a teacher here in children actually using those segmented lunch boxes so that they didn't have to use, you know, tin foil and cling film. And even myself now, as a staff member here, I actually don't use it either. And I will say I was a guilty person that always used it, and I don't anymore. So it really was a fantastic challenge that the whole school got involved in. And fifth class, they were fifth class last year. They were fantastic at doing it. They got everybody on board, including the staff.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's definitely an important part, is keep it to, you know, the whole organization, the whole school, definitely get the teachers involved. And we actually have a message there from your Green Schools coordinator who's saying that they are hoping to have the book printed later this year and that there are 35 recipes in it. So that's amazing. So, and then we've we just have maybe one or two last questions. So a pupil is wondering which food took the longest to rot in the experiment. So I know you guys said that it was the leeks that made the most gas. Was it the leeks that took the longest to rot, or did you notice, was there any vegetable that took longer to start to break down?
There, up you come, guys. They're having a group chat here about it. What took the longest to rot?
It would be the banana, the mashed up banana.
Okay. And was that just the banana, or did you have the banana skin in there?
Just the banana.
Just the banana. Okay, interesting. Because it's interesting because sometimes people think, oh, if they're out for a walk, that they can just throw away their leftover food and it will rot really quickly. But it is good to know that it does take a long time to break down. So it's really not a good idea to do that. Thanks a million, guys. And then we'll have one last question for Bree. And they would just like you to clarify, when can you freeze food? Is it before the use by date or before the best before date?
So you can freeze before either and it will stay fresher. The difference is if you freeze before the use by date, when you unfreeze it, you need to eat it immediately, or it could make you a bit ill if you wait too long. The best before date, when you unfreeze it, it's not as big of a rush because that won't actually make you ill. It's just maybe a little less nutritious.
Brilliant. Thanks, Milbury. And I think as we'll wrap up there. I just want to say again, thank you so much to Bree and to all of our brilliant speakers from Carysfort. I really appreciated hearing from you all. It was great to have all of these questions from you guys. And just a reminder, if anyone in your school or your organization missed it, we will have it up, the recording up on our website later. And we'll definitely keep you all informed if the recipe book does become available from Carysfort. We'd love to share it with other schools who are interested in taking part. So thanks again to everybody. Hope you all enjoyed the rest of World Food Day and the rest of Climate Action Week. And we appreciate you all coming and for all of your questions and comments. So thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.